So if you watched my last layout update, you'll know that this scene here was just cardboard lattice, and that's about all I had as far as scenery. So you can tell since then a lot has happened since my last update in this scene in particular. This is the scene at, well, it's going to become Avery, Ohio, where the the Ohio route, I believe it's 220, crosses over the tracks here. In my era, there's like a wooden trestle. I think now it's a concrete overpass, but I'm going to model this scene based off of this picture that I found in this book. This book is called Berkshire's Nickel Plate Road. It's an excellent book, excellent resource, all about the Berkshires on the nickel plate, because that was kind of their flagship engine. But anyway, in this book, there's a picture here, taken of this exact scene of the 718 coming westbound. So I'm inspired by this picture to model this scene. Avery's just outside of Bellevue, so this is on the Cleveland division. But anyway, so if I get the book, and I bring the book over, look at this scene, and you look over the track, I think I got it pretty close. I mean, obviously you can see I'm on a much tighter curve and it's more on straight track in the picture and, you know, a few other things. But I think for the most part, I'm gonna get this pretty close, at least as close as I reasonably can. So I'm excited to work on this scene. Again, a lot has progressed in this scene since the last time. It was just cardboard lattice, and that's about all I had. I think it was only in this area I had cardboard lattice. So since then, I've done a lot more scenery. My first time actually trying any kind of scenery, you know, terrain making scenery. So I did this with cardboard lattice I talked about before. Then I went back over it with plaster cloth over the whole thing. And then I took Sculptamold and just put Sculptamold, 2 layers of Sculptamold over. So I really wanted to cover the whole thing so you wouldn't see any of the divots. You see the cardboard lattice underneath. I think I did a pretty good job. You can see over there where I have 1 layer of Sculptamold, you can see how you can still see the cardboard lattice. But over here, it's not too bad. So this scene's coming along nicely. The next thing I got to do here will be paint, followed by ground cover, and then, you know, do all the fields and all the foliage and trees and whatever. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to go about that, as putting in where I want to have fields versus trees and just grass and such. But it's going to be something like that, or something along the lines of all 3 of those in this area. But this is coming along really nicely. So I know I've talked about this before, I think in my last layout update, but just the importance of modeling terrain. And you can see where the advantage of having the track raised up really comes in handy here, because as I mentioned in the last video, just to touch on it again, the track is raised up 4 inches above the top of the base table here. In doing so, really allows to model down. See, I think everybody in O-scale especially, they can model up, but not many people model down. And that's a missed opportunity in my opinion, because again, the earth isn't flat, and the railroads and a lot of times are built on fills or, you know, some kind of technique to keep the track as flat as possible, keep the right-of-way as flat as possible. And so modeling in the way that I did it here, you can see how the track the terrain seamlessly transitions from this cut here where it comes underneath the road bridge, which is just temporarily modeled by this piece of cardboard. You can see how it's in a cut. As we progress around the curve, you can see the hillside gradually comes down. We come into here, it's a little bit more of a low-lying area where we're actually, if I put the camera down on the layout, the ground here, you can see it's actually below the track, and same thing on the other side. And then as we continue around this way, you can see it gradually turns into more of a fill. And so by the time we're at the end of the table here, the track is we're pretty low below the track, and that is a fill that's going to lead onto this bridge, which I'll talk about more in a second. But this is such a great and easy technique to do. I mentioned, as I said, the track sits on a plywood strip, and what I did was I just took this cardboard and cut it to make a temporary fascia until I get actual hardboard or plywood or something that'll go in place. This is just temporary. It's just some plywood. It's just some cardboard that I cut. It's a kind of terrain idea that I wanted. So you see, it's not cut perfectly straight. It's kind of cut to flow, you know, within flowing hillside. You can see some more over there. And then with that, I just took cardboard strips, and I ran cardboard strips from the edge of the quote-unquote fascia right up to where the track is. And in some areas, like over here, if actually, let me show underneath. In some areas over here, so here is the track, and then here's the edge of the table. So you can see between here and the edge of the table and where the track is, I put in, there it is, I put in another piece of cardboard just so it's not one big long cardboard strip running all the way to the end. So it kind of, again, adds a little bit more terrain. When you look at it from over here, you can't even really tell. So again, I'm really proud and just very satisfied with how this whole effect works and how it really came out. And I'll show more I'll show more later in the video, some more examples of this without the topping on it. You can see how I did it. And again, same thing over here. You can see here's the edge of the table. Then I have another piece in between that it runs up to, connects to this piece, and it runs down to the track like this. And you can see the same thing over here. And you can see where I haven't put the sculpting mold on over there yet. But this is such an important technique, a very easy technique. It's kind of fun, I think, to see how everything comes together and to lay out how I want to do my terrain and landforms. But again, I'm really happy with this. I think more people should do this. Again, we don't see enough of modeling down in O scale. It's all modeling up, or it's modeling with no kind of terrain at all. It's just flat. But again, very, very happy with this. And I think this seems going to come along really nicely. And I think I'm on a really, I think I'm on my way to recreating this picture pretty closely on this layout. So it's going to come along really nice. Now, cardboard lattice is not the only way to go about doing scenery when it comes to doing, modeling hills or terrain or something. The other approach I could have done here would have been foam. And I did consider foam when I was trying to figure out, think about how I wanted to do scenery. I definitely considered foam, but I have experience doing some cardboard lattice, not in my own layout, but I've done cardboard lattice before, so I kind of knew what to do. And I had a feeling, that this approach would work a little better for me. So that's why I did cardboard lattice. It's actually probably a little more work in using foam, because foam you can just cut into it and I can make all the hills I want probably in one pass. But I've heard a lot of unfavorable things about foam. It all comes down to what you prefer. But I know how to use cardboard lattice, and I like doing the cardboard lattice, and I think the results I've gotten with it, especially over here where I've put the sculpting mold on, you can't even really tell it's lattice. I think it's a pretty solid technique, and I'm pretty happy with it. And I intend, at this point I'm pretty much done with a lot of the cardboard lattice work anyway, most of the terrain. I have this area to finish next. But I'm pretty happy with it, so I'm gonna stick with it, and maybe for the next layout I'll try foam if I have another layout at some point. So another big update to the layout since last time, another big noticeable change since last time, is the addition of all this new track here at Brockton. At this point, the Brockton track layout is the way I want it. I'm pretty happy with it, and that's actually another change I'll talk about in a minute. But I got these switches from Nick, my friend Nick. He wasn't using them. He bought them for his layout, ended up not having a need for them, and he actually had the exact type of switches that I needed to create the track arrangement that I wanted here, so thanks, Nick. So basically how it consists of is if we're coming from the west, we're going eastbound on the nickel plate main, we approach Brockton. There's an 072 switch here. This is the crossover, I guess, onto the Pensy here. So this switch leads through this, kind of like a lengthened out crossover to this Y switch. I think it's an 072 Y switch. And then now it's double track continuing east. This is the Pensy here, and the nickel plate is this track. But I'm really happy with this track arrangement, or this way I was able to create this crossover. Because my biggest gripe with really a lot of O-scale layouts, and especially when it comes to crossovers and stuff, is the track is placed way too far apart to be realistic. Like if you can model a double track main line and you have weeds or plants or grass or anything in between the two track main line, you want to be realistic, you're doing it wrong. Track should not be that far apart. And so since a lot of the fast track switches, they have these very long pieces that kind of come off on the turnout, so it makes it almost impossible to have a crossover while keeping the track, the distance I have, the two tracks so close together like I have it here. So I played around in my online layout designer to create the best combination of a crossover that I could get that still results in the two tracks being nice and close together, a nice prototypical distance apart. And so this is what I came up with. So it's an 072 Y switch connected to just a regular 072. This is I guess it'd be a right hand switch. And then in between here I want to say it's 084. And then I think this is an 048 actually in the middle here. And I want to say this is an 060 or 072. It might be 048. Honestly, I'm not really sure. But I just played around with it until I found something that worked in the online track, the digital planner. And this is what I was able to come up with. And I think it's a unique crossover. And it's also pretty true to the prototype too. It's a little bit more simplified, but looking at pictures of Brockton, this is relatively close. So if we go, see we're on the Pensy main line, the Pensy Chautauqua branch here, we're gonna go westbound. We comes through here, and you can see the crossover splits off to go join the nickel plate, where the Pensy track continues on this way, and it just comes out, and it goes off the table here. And I will take a Dremel and just cut this so it's nice and flush with the edge of the table. I did have a plan here briefly. I talked about this in layout update 2 to model the small engine facility that was here at Brockton on the Pensy. Again, decided to scrap that idea because, well, for two things. A, it would have required another Y switch, and these are very expensive. They're like 130 bucks for one switch. I don't really want to spend that money on a switch. And the bigger reason was I did not anticipate having the hill over here. Well, I didn't anticipate any kind of hill here in the first place, as I wanted to model the New York Central. But once I built this hill, the hill needed to come down somewhere, and so it kind of took a lot into the Brockton scene here. So that significantly cut a lot of the room I wanted to take for this engine servicing facility in this corner. So I ended up scrapping that idea. I think it looks a lot better anyway. So I'll have the crossing here, railroad crossing will come through where this car is. It'll kind of go, then it'll turn a little bit to go this way, so I don't want to have any kind of crossing, obviously, over where the switch point is. So, but anyway, this will go, I'll have a crossing here, and then I think it'll be a nice scene that's not too crazy, condensed. Again, in my last video, I showed the progress of the 3D printed BM tower that my brother made from, printed and designed and printed for me for my Christmas gift. Here is this is the complete version. It's not fully assembled though. I just kind of have it sitting here temporarily. Like this wall is supposed to go like over here, and then there's some other wall that I just have sitting in pieces over here. I just haven't assembled it yet. But this is the finished printed model. I still have to add some window panes and then paint it the correct colors. But this is what it pretty much looks like. I think it looks really good for a 3D printed model. It's pretty much 100% accurate to how BM Tower looked. Again, I'm really happy with it. It looks awesome. And nobody makes a BM Tower, or even something that kind of resembles BM Tower in O scale. So this is a one-of-a-kind model. 3D printing is great. I wish I knew how to do it, but I have my brother to do that kind of stuff for me. So it looks awesome. But also, as a kind of an added bonus, with this deleting the Blasdell scene, I was able to stretch out Brockton a bit. My original plan was to have the tower here located right here. In real life, the tower was about a quarter mile, well, probably about a mile down the track from where like the station and like quote unquote downtown Brockton was. And so I thought having the tower here was gonna look very condensed. It's just gonna look just all too tight, you know, all kind of squished up into this board here. And so I moved the tower over to there. So that way when we look now, looking at like where the station is, you can see the tower is way off in the distance there, and it just looks, the sight lines are just a lot better. So I'm really happy with just how this whole area looks. I think it looks a lot better. And it's gonna be really enhanced. It's gonna be enhanced a lot more once I get my signals in. I have a guy who's, I believe it's, I wish I knew the name of the company. I'll link it in the description because I wanna give him credit. I'll talk more once the signals come in. But anyway, I gave him some plans and such for some 3D printed nickel plate accurate signals, and I do intend to have the full BM interlocking correctly signaled, or at least signaled somewhat that resembles the prototype and how this interlocking was signaled. So it's really going to enhance the look a lot more once I have the signals in. I'm really excited to get this scene just looking a little bit more together once all that stuff comes in. I think it's going to be a really, just looking like standing out here watching the trains come down, you know, on the curve, past the tower, past the signals, and then into like the main hub here at Brockton's going to look really cool. Another quick thing I don't want to gloss over here. This is another scene I'm working on. This is in between like the station at Brockton and BM Tower. This is a little underpass I'm going to have here. This is actually based off an underpass at Harbor Creek, Pennsylvania on the nickel plate, which isn't, it's like on the outskirts of Erie. But I found this picture of a train going under this underpass, and I liked it. So I'm going to model that in this area here. It's just a nice, you know, kind of scenery filler. But again, you can see the excellent use of terrain. See, it goes from the flat, it goes down here, and the track kind of comes up over and runs along, you know, it kind of runs along this little raised hill here. It's actually on a fill down here. Again, nobody models elevation, and it looks so much better. Your layout just looks so much better when you have a scene like this versus your entire layout looking like this, where it's just flat. To come around from Brockton, heading eastbound, we come back into the Lorraine scene. Well, the outskirts of the Lorraine scene here. So Lorraine right now is kind of my staging area. I think as I talked about this in the last video, it's a huge mess, but it'll get cleaned up as progress warrants. But anyways, we go a little bit west of Lorraine here. This is the scene running alongside Lake Erie. And so Lake Erie's on this side, the track is here, and then in real life is US Route 6, which runs basically right alongside the tracks alongside the lake. So I wanted to model Route 6. So eventually I'm gonna have a crossing It's kind of gonna like go like this. It'll come across the tracks in this general area, and there'll be an intersection here, and this will be where Route 6 will kind of run up alongside the track here. So I laid this out today. I just cut out some cardboard to lay out where I want the road to go, and then I have some cars sitting here for the effect. And then it'll come up. In real life, Route 6 continues on, and but the route, and also in real life, there is the road isn't just a big loop, so the road has to go somewhere. So I have the road come through, and it turns off, crosses over the Pensy track here, and then it'll just come off the edge of the layout. But it's looking pretty good. Obviously, there's no lattice here yet, obviously, but I did lay out the like the fascia here, the temporary fascia, so I know how I'm going to lay out everything as far as where the fascia is going to connect to, but nothing there yet. I just have I kind of have the framework in before the fascia. I did this today. I think the whole scene here along the lake is going to look really cool. I think it's going to be a really, really nice scene, especially when you look down at it like a track level. See a train come around that nice super elevated curve on that little fill above the road with the car here. It's gonna look awesome. So I'm excited to see how this scene's gonna pan out. So you hadn't picked up on it earlier in the video, if you didn't see it in the background or something, you'll notice that there is currently no track on the bridge. But there is an actual bridge here instead of the temporary plywood strip I had here before. Kind of a long story with this bridge and how I got this bridge. This was not my original plan. My plan here was to have a lift bridge before. The lift bridge has been at Lorraine since the 70s. But in the nickel plate, the steam era, the era that I'm modeling, there was a swing bridge here. And the swing bridge would have been cool to model at the time, but the Lionel lift bridge is a little more easier to come across. There was actually one on eBay being sold by trains for the longest time for like $200, and they usually go for a lot more. So I was like, you know what, that's great. It's not going to go anywhere. I'll just wait and I'll buy it when I need it. Well, I went to go buy it and it was gone. It was missing off of the eBay store, so apparently it's sold. So I didn't really know where else to look for a Lionel lift bridge at a reasonable price. These go for like $400 or $500 as bridges. So I was looking around at eBay just seeing what I could find, and I came across this little bridge for a fraction of the price, for $50. It's actually a custom built bridge, so it's made of wood. And I don't know who built it, but it's made of wood, and these are like a little bit these are, I guess, made of little, like probably brass or something, but it's completely custom built. It's a really nice bridge for only $50, and it's very high craftsmanship. Again, made of wood. I think it looks almost like steel. So I was really happy to find this, especially for the price that I did. And it fits perfectly. It's 36 inches long. This is a 39-inch gap, or it's 39 inches between the tables. So I picked this bridge up off of eBay, and it did come a little bit damaged, and I was prepared for that. The seller was very, very easy to work with and informed me of what was, that it was a little bit damaged in the shipping or whatnot. So I had to so there's a few parts missing here. I'll probably have these 3D printed. My brother 3D print the missing, like the plates here to get that fixed, and a little bit of chipping here and such, but that's not really a big deal because my plan is to convert this into a swing bridge. It's a pretty decent model as is, and it wouldn't take that much work to make it into a swing bridge that somewhat resembles the bridge that was actually at Lorraine. So to make it to a swing bridge, my plan is to remove this center X beam here, and then put a little control house here in the middle. Something all scratch builded or 3D printed or something. I think that alone will get it pretty close to how a swing bridge actually looks, and then I'll mount it from the center. So it's going to be a little bit of work, but hopefully not too much work. I want to have it hopefully finished at some point, somewhat reasonably, because right now I can't run trains. I mean, I could run trains across it with a temporary bridge, but I bought this bridge, I want to use it. So hopefully I can have trains running on it pretty soon. And then this is a 1x3 that I cut, and my plan is to have the 1x3 inside the bridge, so it has like the girder inside the truss. And then I scratch built this deck here out of some balsa wood and a little bit of string for the railing. But I think it's a pretty nice bridge for $50. My only gripe with it, aside from the damage, but that's not really a big deal to me. My only gripe with it is it's a double track bridge. I'm using it for single track. You can see it has like double track markings here. So it's a little bit wider than it really should be for a single track bridge. Not really much I can do about shortening it, at least not easily, so I'm going to leave it as is. But, it's the only thing I really wish that was different about it. It is a little bit big, and it does sit awfully tall now, but once I have it, it's going to sit lower because this girder will be inside of it. So it'll sit at least an inch lower with this 1x3. So it's just kind of sitting up here temporarily right now just to kind of give you an idea how it's going to look. I haven't really done any work on it yet, but it needs, like I said, a little bit of touch up, a little bit of cleanup work, and the conversion to a swing bridge. but I think it's gonna look really good when it's on the layout. It really just brings the layout all together, because that, I mean, obviously that temporary bridge didn't look very good. So having an actual bridge here makes a lot better, and I'm excited to, um, get this bridge worked on, get it fully installed, have trains running across it. I think it's really going to bring the layout and just bring the whole Lorraine scene together, especially since once I clean up, Lorraine doesn't look like a mess. So talk a little bit now about some new trains I've gotten to receive in the last, since the last video. It's actually been a lot, more than I care to admit. But up first here is this MTH outside brace wooden boxcar. Got this from one of my local train stores for a decent, typical freight car price. Letter for Southern Pacific. I want to get a nice variety of road names on this railroad, my railroad. Nickel plate was, a lot of kind of like a bridge line. They moved a lot of freight between Chicago and the East Coast, so it probably wasn't uncommon to see a bunch of different road names on their trains. I just picked up this nice SP car for, again, a good price. A really nice car. It's typical MTH. Again, I'm trying to build my steam era freight car collection, because I don't have too many steam era cars. Before this, I focused a lot more on modern stuff. So my steam era freight car collection has grown a lot, to give it credit, but still trying to get a car or two here or there where I have a chance. So I picked this up for myself a few weeks ago. So my friend Nick and I did a little bit of a nice Christmas gift exchange this year. So we got each other a couple things. I got Nick a MTH piggyback car, and he got me this nice Lionel reefer car. It's kind of like an inside joke. It's a milk car. It's a dairy, a milk car, and I drink milk, and it's kind of like it's like a running joke between me and some of my friends. So he got me this car for as a kind of like a running joke. But it's a really nice car. It's a Lionel car from the early 2000s, I think 2003 or so. It's one of the milk cars, and I'm really happy to have it. Fits in nicely with my reefer train I got going on here. I think this is my 6th or 7th or 8th reefer car I think I have. All that I've gotten in the last, since September I got my first one. So the reefer train's going pretty quickly here, and I'm really happy to have this car. It's a nice addition to the reefer train. Now Nick knows me better than anybody and knows that I'm secretly a huge fan of the Union Pacific, and I just absolutely love the big boy. I actually pre-ordered 3 of the new Lionel big boys in the new catalog. So he got me this sweet pin so I can show off my Union Pacific big boy pride. 4014 is awesome. It's one of the greatest engines ever built. At this point, I'm honestly thinking about just scrapping the whole nickel plate idea and modeling Sherman Hill. I don't know, we'll see about that. I have a lot of money and a lot of time put into this layout, but I don't know, this pin's kind of tempting, so love this pin. Thanks, Nick. I just love it so much. I also got this from Nick, this nice nickel plate caboose. This is a Lionel caboose. This is actually my second bay window caboose that I have. This is a K-line one. This is a Lionel one. And you can see the difference in the shade of the strip there at the top. It really should be this gray, so Lionel got it right. The K-line one is wrong. It's white, where it really should be that gray. But aside from that, they're pretty similar. They're nice cabooses. I like the MTH. I like the Lionel one a little bit better. I like its ride height. I think the K-line one rides too high. But yeah, this is a nice caboose. I'm happy to have it. So now I have 2 nickel plate cabooses. I need to get some more non-bay window cabooses. But bay window cabooses are my favorite kind of caboose anyway, so I like my 2 nickel plate ones. I did add a little bit of detail to both these cabooses. You can see I have the little grills on the windows, which is nickel plate accurate. And then on the K-line one, I had the little flags on the end, which is again accurate for the nickel plate. But aside from that, they're pretty stock. Also, I need to add the flags to the Lionel caboose, but nickel plate cabooses are sharp. I like the red and white, so I'm happy to have 2 of these cabooses. And I think next will be in the hunt for some more. I like to get a wood-sided caboose, an MTH rocking wood-sided one for my local freight trains. All right, so don't mind the mess my workbench is right now. Our workbench is supposed to be dirty and a mess anyway. It shows some real progress being made. But anyway, we're over here to show off some engines I've gotten recently. This first one here is a Lionel 2662 Malay. Got this from my uncle. Great engine. It's actually my first TMCC engine. It's from like 2001. It's a really old engine. But these are great models, these Malays. Now, this engine is out of my era and out of my location on the nickel plate. Nickel plate had 3 of these Malays. They were originally wheeling engines, and they made it 3 of them. Wheeling had a couple of them, and the 3 of them made it the nickel plate numbers 9, 41, 42, and 43, I believe. This engine was formerly wheeling in Lake Erie 8005 that I re-decaled to nickel plate 941, which actually, ironically, Lionel actually made the 941. and the same run as this one. This is a wheeling engine. But I re-decaled it, and then I went ahead and weathered it, obviously. It's a pretty standard weathering job, really. Can't say too much, anything unique about it. The only thing I did do was different. I had some boiler streaking on it with some weathering pencils. That's actually a technique I learned from Norm Charbonneau, so it's pretty nice. The engine's not quite done yet. You see I saw the masking tape over some of the windows. I haven't gotten around to that yet. On the front end, the only thing I'd added here was a twin beam headlight, which is accurate from the nickel plate. But again, this engine still needs some little more work. I'm gonna add a Mars light over the headlight, which is actually accurate for the wheeling or the X-wheeling Malays. They had Mars lights, which is kind of a cool feature. I also need to I have not decaled or weathered the tender yet, but that'll be next. I'll get to that soon. I do want to do that at some point soon. But it's a pretty nice engine. Again, doesn't really fit my era or location, but that's okay. Take a little bit of creative liberty. Ever since I saw the Western Maryland 1309, I always kind of wanted one of these engines. I think they're neat looking engines. And it's nickel plate, so it's not like it doesn't fit in entirely, but I'm pretty happy to have it. So the other big new item I've gotten in the last, more recently, has been this Weaver brass nickel plate Hudson. I'm really excited to get this engine. I got it from my friend Matty C of Matty C Trains, who's looking to sell it, and he actually waited to sell it to me specifically, which I'm really happy for. So thank you to him, because I really wanted one of these engines. The addition of this engine completes my goal of having at least one of every class of nickel plate steam that was running in my era in 1957, with the exception of this one. This was retired in 1955. So between the Hudson, the 3 Berkshires, and the Mikado, and the 080, I have at least one engine of every class that was running in the nickel plate at my era. So at this point, as far as steam is concerned, I want to get some more duplicates of what I already have. But anyway, this is a Weaver Hudson. Like I said, it's my first brass engine I've ever owned, which is kind of cool. I've never owned a brass engine before. These are really, really nice engines, these Weaver Hudsons. And the nickel plate Hudsons alone are just cool looking engines. So since I've got it, I have done a little bit of work on it. I added all the white walls to it, because I wanted to model one with white walls. A lot of these Hudsons, they all had white walls, and they were, at least in pictures, they were all kept clean enough that it seems like the white walls were visible in a lot of them, even up until the later years. And these were used on special excursions and all kind of stuff. By the 50s, they were kind of being used on, they were kind of bumped from the passenger service by diesels, but they were being used on special excursions, work trains, locals, kind of a little bit of everything. But either way, there were a lot of pictures that shows them with the white walls, even in their, less glorified duties. So this engine right now is number 177. I'm going to renumber it to either 174 or 170. Nickel plate had 8 of these Hudsons, and 2 of them, 170 and 174, had Mars lights. So I want to renumber it to one of those 2 engines so I can add a Mars light to it, because as stock it does not come with a Mars light. And like I said, the majority of these engines in the 50s did not have Mars lights for some reason, but I want to model one with a Mars light. So I think I'm going to renumber it to 170, add a Mars light, twin beam insert. And then I'm going to lightly weather it, like not as heavy as something like the Malay or my other steam engines. I'm going to weather it a lot lighter than that, because with the white walls and a lot of pictures, these aren't the dirtiest engines around. But yeah, it's a really nice engine. It also needs a little bit of internal work. It has the old engineer on board speed control, which isn't the greatest. And the sounds, it has, it's a very old engine. I think it's from the early 2000s, and it has one of the lower end versions of rail sounds in it with 2 chuffs and such. So I like to get all that upgraded. But yeah, it's a nice engine. Like I said, so far I've added the white walls to it. I added the headlight, or the visor with the cab windows. I added cap curtains to it. But yeah, I'll show more on this once I have it done. Same with the Malay. I might do a model roster update concerning both of these engines. But just for a quick sneak peek, here's a tender, by the way. Just for a quick sneak peek, here's what I got. So I'm really happy with these 2 engines. And like I said, my nickel plate roster, my steam roster is pretty close to complete at this point. I think these are, between these 2, these are my 7th and 8th nickel plate steam engines. So I have 8 steam engines, 8 scale nickel plate steam engines, which is pretty awesome. So really happy to have these 2. They're gonna look really good in some future videos with them running around the layout. So that's about it for this 3rd layout update on the nickel plate road east end. Hope you enjoyed watching it. Hope you enjoyed seeing all the progress that's been made, and hope you like some of my approaches to the hobby that seem are a little bit more unconventional for some reason. And again, as I stand by it, they really shouldn't be. They make a layout looks a lot better using a lot of these scenery techniques like I touched on. But it's really exciting to see a lot of these scenes are starting to come together, like especially the scene back there in that corner, as well as up here in the lake scene. I think this is gonna look, it's gonna be a really, a lot of unique scenes in this layout, and a lot of opportunities for photography and videography for, you know, running session videos and stuff like that. So that's about it for this layout update. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.